No worries.
Okay, you're good.
Thank you. Good evening, all, and welcome to the January 23rd Citizens Police Review Board meeting. I believe we have quorum. Have we heard? I think we're waiting for one more member, and we didn't hear that he is excused this evening, right? We're waiting to hear. So
That's correct.
Thank you. Let me start with how the meeting goes. We do have new people. Let me do that first of order to welcome Mr. Dalen Davis to the board. I was sworn in about a couple weeks ago now. So welcome. On behalf of the board, I welcome you, Mr. Davis. So this is how the proceedings go. We will do an outline of the proceedings, followed by our executive's report, case reviews, and if there's anybody out there on Facebook or any of the social media, if you wish, at the end, you have 3 minutes to speak with us. If you could let us know by putting your name in the chat that you would like to join us, we will call on you after our business. The only report that I have is I want folks, and we could do this more at new business, but you know, people are starting to come back to meetings in person. So what I'd like you to do is think about coming back in the February meeting and maybe proposing 1 or 2 or more times that we would meet. For the new people, what we normally did pre-COVID was that every other month we met at city chambers, and then we met out in the community, either at a community center or at a senior center within communities. So something to think about, and we can revisit and discuss at our February meeting. Beth, are you ready to give your executive director's report?
Well, of course. Thank you, Dr. Gershio. Good evening, members. Welcome, Mr. Davis. Yes, Mr. Davis was sworn in on the 16th of January, just a week ago. He is succeeding our chair emerita, Dr. Emma Lucas Darby, in the non-law enforcement professional seat designated as a mayoral seat number 6. And that term expires on October 31st, 2027. We look forward to working with you, Mr. Davis. Welcome aboard. The City Council's law enforcement professional seat, designated as seat number 2, remains vacant, and that term concludes October 31st of 2025. That means we have 6 members out of the complement of 7. And I have not heard any news about movement on that particular seat. We have Investigator Edwards with us for her first board meeting tonight. She was activated as a CPRB investigator December 18th. We did advise you of her impending appointment, I believe, at the December 5th meeting, but she's now with us. She's hit the ground running, and it's wonderful to have her aboard. New members and new staff are required by the city code to attend the Pittsburgh Bureau of Police sponsored Citizen Police Academy. And they typically run 2 academies a year, one in the fall and one in the spring. The upcoming academy, the Spring Academy, opens on Wednesday, February 28th at 6:30. It runs for 12 weeks, and it will be conducted at the Jewish Community Center in Squirrel Hill. I believe that Ms. Hampton did reach out to members and about registration. The seats have been held for you, but you do have to fulfill their registration requirements. And it's a form, background check, and then they notify you that you've been accepted. Again, it is a requirement, and sometimes members can't make the first one that's available to them, and they go to the second one in that particular year. It's our hope, though, that our members can attend, and I know, Ms. Edwards, you are registered and you'll be attending the Spring Academy. It's a great program. It truly is. I had the opportunity when I was on the Human Relations Commission to go to the second academy way back in 96 or 97. And to see how it has grown and evolved. It's a really well organized, curriculum wise anyway, to give people who otherwise don't have the opportunity to observe or learn from the people that do the work. What's expected of them. You hear from the best and the brightest. You hear about how it's supposed to be done. So when you're looking at allegations or descriptions of behavior and conduct from the field, from people complaining about conduct, you have a much better informed perspective when you're assessing the evidence available and the actual conduct of the officer, whether it's in or outside of policy. From which you can make a judgment on whether the complaint is sustainable or not. It's a really good program, and there are a lot of fun parts to it too. So I think you'll enjoy it.
So we have Ms. Shields, Mr. Cotter, and Mr. Davis that will be attending hopefully in the February or the fall one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Kotler, Mr. Davis, Ms. Shields, and Ms. Edwards from our staff.
Okay.
Now, running also is a program that they opened a few years ago, which is the Student Police Academy. That targets high school students, and very similar to the regular Citizen Police Academy. That program runs for 10 weeks, for an hour and a half a week. It will be opening this March. I think it's March 14th for high school students, and it's going to be conducted at the Administrative Hall, Point Park, down on Wood Street. Another great opportunity for young people to participate, engage, and learn about policing and meet people that are in policing and add that the human side to it. Also a good tool for recruitment. So I don't know what their capacity is this year for that academy, but we typically do have an opportunity to speak to both the CPA and the Student Police Academy. And it's always a good experience. Community events, the annual Racial Justice Summit, previously known as the Black and White Reunion, was postponed from last weekend. I am unaware of a date that it'll convene, but unfortunately, I guess there are a number of reasons, including illness, that they had to postpone it. So when we hear of when they will convene some form of the summit, we will pass that information along to you. Procedural matters. There's a couple of things that I like to go over in the beginning of every year. And Dr. Curcio hit one of them already, and that being the desire you may have to schedule some in-person meetings. And my understanding is you're going to defer that discussion to February. But if you have questions or an interest in pursuing that and you want to run it by us in terms of dates or process, please feel free to reach out to staff. We can assist with that so you can make an informed decision in February and perhaps schedule so we are able to provide public notice in a timely fashion. The issue of confidentiality is something we try to review on an annual basis, and that is that everything that you are exposed to in terms of the case investigations remains confidential until and only if there is a public hearing on the particular case. When members receive case summaries, and this is as much for public as it is for members, and a reminder for staff, but there is no personally identifiable information contained in those summaries. And that assists us in bias control. And it helps when you have a small group of members. We have 7 board members who are very active and prominent in our community. And oftentimes it happens that they know parties involved in a particular complaint. And while we have 3 board members who convene or form a panel to hear a public hearing, sometimes we run into, and it's happened a couple of times anyway, where we couldn't establish 3 people who didn't know the complainant or someone who was a principal in a complaint. And we also check for the bias related to anything that may be non-material to a complaint. If a complaint involves an allegation of bias policing, then race, gender, whatever protected class it may be, is material to that allegation. And that information will be included in a complaint summary. But if it is not material to the complaint summary, those protected class characteristics are typically not included in the summary. That's to prevent any kind of a bias, and also to avoid situations where a member may find themselves surprised and then having to recuse themselves after they've already taken an action. So we do, that's an explanation as to how do we control for bias, and also that the rules do provide for recusal of members, voluntary, or if a party in the complaint challenges a board member and alleges they're conflicted, that there is a process available for members to recuse themselves. Public statements. Again, on a regular basis, we like to remind everybody that the chair of the board is authorized to speak on behalf of the board, and the executive director is authorized to speak on behalf of the board. On any other matter, the chair is certainly able to designate a member to speak on a particular matter, but it does require that authorization to speak on behalf of the board, other than the chair and the executive director. That allows for some continuity and consistency in the board's public statements and positions when that's relevant. Anybody have any questions about those things? Okay, a controversial issue in the community right now is the settlement with the estate of the late Mr. Jim Rogers. You may have seen some of this in reporting, that an $8 million settlement was agreed to by the parties back in the spring, came forward to council. Council did vote to approve that settlement by 9 votes, so it was unanimous. And then some information became available that questioned the sensibilities of that particular settlement. And one of the issues, major issue, is the cause and manner of Mr. Rogers' death. Medical records that previously had not been disclosed and are still not out in the public realm, but have been used in other administrative proceedings, and apparently to some extent leaked and casting question on how that settlement agreement was reached, as to what was the cause of Mr. Rogers' death. Did the encounter with the police actually cause his death? Did Pittsburgh police, are they responsible for that death? Or was it a medical situation, an untreated medical situation, a medical misadventure? Did something else happen? And in an effort to obtain some better information, or at least better understand how that settlement is structured. We sought to obtain a copy of that settlement, and it's apparently through last week anyway. We can't find it. It's not available. There is some activism in the community that's raising questions and demanding answers with regard to the identity of the parties in the estate of Mr. Rogers. Some question as to how much information was known at the time when counsel agreed to the settlement. Did they rely on people outside? Or did they pursue some further investigation into it in terms of obtaining documentation and reviewing it before they cast their final vote? Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess it doesn't, procedurally, when some of these issues were brought to city council, council president demanded that payment be stopped on the $8 million agreed amount of settlement, and there was due a $4 million payment. But that was after the payment had been authorized by city council, and as a result, $4 million check was issued to the estate. We also know that through arbitration, 3 of the 4 officers who were fired from that incident have been restored to their employment with back pay. There is 1 remaining officer in arbitration. The district attorney has not issued any kind of criminal inquiry or criminal process against any of the officers that were involved. And in fact, the grand jury, according to what we understand anyway, they failed to issue an indictment against the officers, which further raises the question as to who is responsible for his death. The city has said that they believe that the police did cause his death, and as a result, they leveraged that to make the settlement with the estate. So there's a lot of controversy swirling around that particular case. Checks and balances seem to be a little bit iffy right now, because there are questions that need to be answered. The public has every right to know, how did we arrive at paying $8 million of taxpayer money to settle an estate that now it looks like there's question as to whether or not the police were responsible for that death. So anyway, we're watching that. We're trying to learn more about it. Much of this is really just not speculation so much as just wonderment, like, well, what are the real facts here? And as I said, researching into court documents and court records, we cannot find the settlement agreement. At least through last week, we couldn't. And it would be of interest to us to be able to review that document. Not sure at what point, or even if there's the potential for a process that would require the disclosure of certain documents that then, if entered in a court record, would become public, but that has not yet happened.
Would that be the medical records for sure, right? They could be protected.
Any questions about that? Okay, body-worn camera video. That has been something that's been nagging for years.
Hold on, Beth. We got Mr. Davis.
So can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, sorry. I didn't know when we was allowed to ask a question specifically in regards to this. So I just want to recap for my own understanding. You're saying that you can't find the agreement for the $4 million that was issued out by city council?
No, sir.
Okay.
No. The settlement document that identifies the settlement amount of $8 million is not in the court record. At least through last week, it was not.
My other question is, and please forgive me, I hear a lot of interest as far as the settlement, but have yourself or has this body opened a formal process to look into whether or not to see if the officers had violated any policies. I do know, as stated earlier, that a case couldn't be open if there was any type of criminal proceedings happening at the district attorney's office. And since it seems that the district attorney has not made any inquiries, and as you just stated, the failure of the grand jury, it's questions, do we have an open, through yourself as the executive director, a case to investigate, through our means of review?
The district attorney has never issued a prosecutorial decision in that case. So we are looking around that case, if that makes any sense. We're looking at what the outcome was in terms of the disclosure that there was a settlement, and that settlement presumes that the police killed him in that encounter with the taser. And we want to understand, how did they arrive at that decision? I can tell you that from what we know about that particular, the facts around that case, and our staff were on the ground there at the scene that morning. That the encounter itself is questionable as regarding one officer, and how that officer managed that scene, and how that officer engaged with Mr. Rogers. That officer has not been replaced or restored to his position, and nor has he been criminally charged with anything. The time between leaving the scene and getting to the hospital, what we understand in that interim period, there were directions given by supervisors. And some were followed and some were not. And we believe that there was a supervisory failure, a deficiency in the supervision at the scene that day. That was one of the instances that drove us to open an investigation, or an inquiry into the training of supervisors, the pre and post preparation of police supervisors, because we had like 4 incidents that suggested there was a deficiency in the supervision in the course of a particular incident. That included the bicycle cops from a couple years ago, the shooting at the funeral, Mr. Rogers, and there was yet another incident in between. But it told us that there was a question about supervision. And until Chief Scarrato came last year, and he came to this board in July and explained that the curriculum was under revision for supervisory training, professional development of supervisors, and that sort of thing. We understand where they were. Now we have to do a look back to see where are we now from where we were in terms of preparation of supervisors. But in Mr. Rogers' case, there was a question about how supervisors conducted themselves and managed that particular scene. So we're not digging into those particular facts of that encounter until we have a better understanding, or a definitive statement from the district attorney's office. But we're looking at the things that we can look from afar and see there may be something wrong there. So that's how we're managing that, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Anything else, Beth?
Body-worn camera video. In 2017, the state legislature passed the statute known as Act 22 of 2017. And that dealt with public access to body-worn camera video. There was a need to amend Pennsylvania wiretap law because there was audio being captured. There were a lot of details to it all. The outcome was this Act 22 of 2017. And in that law, it outlines how the public or a party who is interested in seeing body-worn camera video can go about requesting it. We have had the benefit of observing body-worn camera video when we are conducting investigations that involved only allegations of administrative misconduct, nothing criminal. Because that material would be arguably, yes, protected under criminal history record information. So we never pushed that. But when we're looking at administrative allegations, then we have a need to see that. Now, OMI, the Office of Municipal Investigations, they, in the last couple of years, changed their procedure for investigating complaints. And one of the things they do now is that if it appears there was an officer's conduct that would benefit from supervisory intervention, they refer that complaint to the zone supervisors. They don't conduct a full investigation anymore. They also have full observation of body-worn camera video. So when they observe the camera video, they can close a case with no further investigation, including not collecting officer statements. Officer statements are protected under a standard called Garrity, which basically says you can't threaten somebody. If you threaten somebody and they have to tell you the truth under the threat of discipline, it can't be used against them in any other proceeding, criminal proceeding. So those Garrity statements are very highly protected. And in 2004, I believe it was, Mr. Ward, you can correct me, but I think it was 2004, we came to an agreement, a settlement agreement with the city through a court order that the issuance of our subpoena would result in our obtaining officer statements given under Garrity. That provided to us the officer side of the story, basically. Those statements are highly confidential. They're protected. They're not used for any reason unless the officer should be in a public hearing and says something contrary to what was stated in his Garrity statement. In which case, our prosecutor, could use that to impeach the witness officer or the subject officer. So we rely heavily on those Garrity statements. If those statements are not taken, then we can't obtain them. And that's a huge loss for us in terms of an investigative tool. We do not have an employment relationship with Pittsburgh police officers. It's purely an executive branch relationship. The city is their employer. We are not. We cannot give them Garrity protection. We can only, through our subpoena, obtain a copy of that statement. But if they don't exist, then we don't have the benefit of that, nor do we have the benefit of viewing body-worn camera video, which is a huge investigative tool. So we were directed to the district attorney's office for access to body-worn camera video. And on November 15th, pursuant to a response to Mr. Elwood by the city solicitor, who referred us to the district attorney's office because there was an agreement with them. The district attorney, under Act 22 of 2017, a jurisdiction may make those determinations, or in the alternative, they can delegate that to the district attorney's office. And here that is apparently what has happened, or at least we're told that there's an agreement between the city and the DA's office related to body-worn camera video. I asked for a copy of that agreement. I did not receive it, nor did I receive a response at that time. I have renewed the request for a copy of that agreement and also asked the city solicitor if if she would be available in the next couple of weeks to meet with Mr. Ward and I, so that we can discuss some of these protocols, some of the procedural issues that the change in OMI's practices has caused. Workarounds, perhaps be creative and help us come up with a workaround that would be agreeable to the Bureau of Police as well as us. So we're waiting to hear back on that, but it is an issue that we have to come to terms with. And among the drawbacks, I mean, clearly the district attorney shouldn't be determining access to video that may not have any subject in that video looking at criminal charges, whether it's an officer, whether it's a civilian, whether it's a victim, whoever it may be. If it's an administrative issue, that is not under the purview of the local district attorney. It's not their jurisdiction. It is the employer's jurisdiction. And our job is to oversee and make sure that checks and balances work. So we have to work that out. And I think that the city solicitor will recognize that, and very optimistic that we'll be able to resolve this to some amenable outcome here. But it's a tough one. If you ask the DA's office to identify particular video, you have to be very, very specific as to time, location, who's involved, and all that. It's also $600 a shot. So, I mean, that's not even reasonable for the taxpayers to have to pay another taxpayer-funded office. We have to find another way. And so that's what we're about doing now. And Mr. Ward has agreed that, a meeting would be appropriate and hopefully be able to come to some working resolution. And that would conclude my report, Madam Chair. Have any questions? I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Pittenger. Any questions from members?
Yes, I have a quick question about the Student Police Academy. I'm sorry, I was ill.
Yeah.
My voice still isn't back. First question is, are those classes at capacity for the students? And second question is, do they receive any kind of credit for attending those classes?
I don't believe they receive any credit. I think we can find that out for you. If you have somebody, we can send you. Mr. Tokarski is the coordinator at the city level. I believe, Ms. Hampton, is that information included in the flyer that was sent out?
I'm not sure what's all included on it. I didn't remember seeing it. And like you, I don't believe it's credited, but I can check and send you an email, Mr. Kotler, if that's good.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it's just they get a certificate of completion. I don't think there's any credit associated with it. I don't think it.
I could see that easily would cover a seminar's credit. If the classes are not at capacity, that is definitely something that could help get them there. That's the only thing I was getting at.
Mr. Ward?
I'm looking at the announcement, and at the very bottom, it does say this program is not an accredited certification course to become a sworn police officer, which is a narrow answer to perhaps a narrow question. I think Mr. Cotton's question may have been broader as to whether it might have other types of credits, whether it's like CLEs for lawyers or things like that.
I was more thinking along the lines of for the students to knock off some credits whenever they head off to college or any kind of post-secondary.
I don't think it would get any college credit. I can tell you that.
Beth, may I add to that?
Sure. Go ahead, Kim.
My daughter attended the student academy. She did receive a certificate. It does look good. It looked good for some of her volunteer. It looked good for her college resume, but it did not take any credits. And she's going into forensics. So it did not qualify for that, but it looked good for the program.
Great, thank you.
It would have to be accredited for a college to give it any awarded any credits. it's a non-credit sort of experience.
But the
Great.
certificate was nice, though, that she has that.
Looks nice
It's a
in their
great program.
portfolio.
Yes.
Yep.
Heidi, any other questions of our solicitor or our executive director?
Dalen has his hand up.
Dalen?
Thank you. And so does Miss Shields. I don't know if you can see her or not. The only question that I had was, when was the date that you asked for the request for the copy of the agreement between the Bureau and the DA's office?
November 15th, 2023.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question on when you talked about coming out into the communities, like sort of like a Q&A. Who do you like? How does that work? I know you have to get permission. I heard that, but how does that work? Like, do you write a letter? Do you call?
We have typically used city facilities. The senior centers, because of their locations within the neighborhoods, and we just arrange it through them. In the past, we have sent letters out to community groups, community organizations, not-for-profit groups, and basically asked them to invite us to come and use their place and have a meeting with us. And we never had much success with that. But we did have limited success with the local, using the known local communities hubs, like the senior centers, the healthy living centers, whatever they're called now. And I think we've been to a couple of facilities owned by churches, but we've been criticized for that. So we tend not to reach out to the local churches to give us, to let us use a space. So we've stuck to the community, the city centers, the city facilities.
Yeah, and
Because they are.
Yeah, it costs.
I'm sorry?
It costs those organizations for setup and cleanup, and so, we're able to use the city, and the burden is on them and not.
We don't have to pay a fee for those buildings for using that space.
Mhm.
And that's also an incentive for us. I mean, taxpayers shouldn't have to be paying double just because we're doing the work they asked us to do. So I think up on the Hill, we have gone to
Mailer.
Alma Speed Fox building.
Oh,
That's
that's right.
typically where we hold, and that's in the summer. We usually are up there in the summer. That's the only, I think that's in recent years, COVID not accepted, but I think that's the only No,
Correct. In
we've
my
used the
tenure.
Carnegie Library facilities. We have gone to the Carnegie Library facilities too. Yeah.
Thanks. I was just asking because I am a nonprofit, I have a nonprofit, and I was just thinking we can implement that into the Hazelwood community. That's all.
Yeah, we use the Hazelwood Center. We've been to the car barn.
Okay.
For meetings, yeah. To give that access to the Hazelwood, Hayes, 31st and 15th Ward.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Alrighty. The only new business I had is, for everybody to think so that when we come back in the February, we can have that full discussion on if and when during the 2024 year, we would go out into community meetings or back down to the city county building in chambers. All right. So if you could be prepared for next month's discussion, I'd greatly appreciate it. It is time now for our case review. So if everybody's have their case reviews up, we can begin. So we have obviously no public hearing set, but we have 3 cases for full investigation. That's case number 194-23, case number 191, 22-23 and case number 138-23. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second,
Second emotion.
discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have 30-day extension of full investigation. There are 0. We have 1 unfounded. And that's case number 188-23. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second,
Second.
thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing there's no one opposed, we will go now to, we have 3 unsustainable. That's case number 206-22, case number 100-22, and case number 073-23. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. We have 1 other, and if you read the case, you know why it's another. It's case number 161-23. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. We have 1 that is suspended, and that is case number 162-23. Oops, I'm sorry, yes. That's it. For that, do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, just, no discussion. Ayes have it. Now, what we have here are 22 that are on continued suspension. These are, the summaries will be provided to members if you have any, and these are the ongoing. So do we read all 22 of these, Beth, or do we just lump them as the group? I think we go through them all.
I'm sorry. No, they're provided as an update and for tracking purposes, so they don't get lost.
Right.
But they are outstanding, and the reasons are
Yeah.
noted there, so that they should be coming back to you. And if they're not, you can call them back if you want an update at any time.
For new members, do you understand the codes, if you will, next to the case, I should say the case numbers? Does everybody understand what that means?
I do not.
Okay, so they're in, well, let's just assume it was chronological order, like 001. So they start at the beginning of the calendar year. Is it fiscal or calendar, Beth?
Calendar.
Calendar. And then the hyphen is the year. And then underneath that is the investigator.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome. Any other questions about that?
Just one, is it possible, at least for the new members, to get like a cheat sheet as far as like the terminology that is used in these? Because I know I found at least for myself, difficult to understand some of the terminology when I got down to, some of the words in these documents.
You mean like the SO and the CX?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure, sure, we can give you a lexicon.
Mm.
Those are the most common, of course, subject officer, the complainant.
Yeah.
And you have a hot link to the particular policies that are alleged to have been violated in your case summaries, and they'll take you out to the police policy, where you see like 12 on that top, that first suspended one, 12-6 use of force violation. That'll take you right to the use of force violation or the use of force policy. Those hot links are there so that you can, for your own edification, have a read through what was expected and what's the investigation telling you. Are there other?
And again, those are the codes for the allegations, right? The
Right, those
code.
are the allegations that are allegedly
Yeah.
violated that particular policy, some element of the policy. Some summaries will drill down to a particular element that we think may have been violated, or we determine that that particular element was not violated and it may be highlighted. But otherwise, it's to give you the opportunity to go out to and look at the policy and what was expected. I don't know, Mr. David, are there other aspects of the summaries that you would recommend we explain more about?
So it was just more of like let me go back up, where the discourteous hearing. I know there was not on the case review agenda, but on the actual summary information that was provided, there was just some terminology, just like was stated, like CAD, just like a cheat sheet of just the basic terminology
Sure.
that is in those documents, at least for
Sure.
the new folks trying to get acclimated to the terminology that is used in these documents.
Understood. It's been a long time since we've had to make sure that those things are identified within the body of the summary. So I apologize to you for that. But CAD is a computer-aided dispatch report. That's what the 911 center records and memorializes a call on. And that gives us the information as to when officers, who responded, who was sent, who responded when they were on scene, and what the outcome was. The rude and discourteous hearing, and I thought that I had put into the summary an explanation what that was. It's not that the hearing itself is rude and discourteous, but it's a collection of complaints that involve perhaps to some degree a credibility assessment, that you just can't tilt it one way or the other. But we know that the individual who came to us was upset, distressed, ticked about whatever their encounter was with a particular officer or officers. But it's just not there. We can't establish that there was misconduct, but we know that person has a good reason to come and tell the board their story and what happened. And when we have a number of those collected, then the board convenes a public hearing. And we invite anyone who had, say, an allegation of unbecoming conduct toward the public, unbecoming conduct in general, that they can come forth and tell you their story. And those hearings, they don't happen all that often, because we wait until we have a good number, maybe 10 or 12 people. Mm-hmm. And then we go forward with that hearing. Sometimes patterns are determined from what the people come and tell the board about. And if there are patterns, then you look a little bit deeper and you can identify whether there's a training issue, if there's a deficiency in the policy or the policy expectation, if there's a supervisory deficiency, if there's something there that tends to produce very similar complaints among people. And then from that, the board can make that finding, and you can make recommendations to the chief and or the mayor that there be something done about this, because obviously whatever it is creating a significant concern in the community at large. But that way, the individuals have their opportunity to come forth and tell their story, get it off their chest, let you know what they experienced and why it was distressing for them. And in turn, if you find that there's a pattern, you can identify and make the recommendations to improve so that that doesn't happen to more people.
I think we
That's
had
the root
one
and discretion.
last year, right, Beth? We had a virtual, was it last year? The end of,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. I think it was last spring.
Yeah, I think we had 5 or 6 folks. The staff reach out and ask them. And then
Yep.
we, as a board, figure out that date. They get the link. And we can listen to them and ask them questions. They can ask us questions. So it's an open dialogue. You know, no evaluation is made of it. You know, it's information for the board and helps us determine what we may be needing to look at. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yes, thank you.
You're quite welcome. Alrighty, anything else for anybody before I go to the next? Yes, Mr.
I
Bill.
might have missed this, but I don't recall a vote to approve the minutes from our last meeting of December 5, 2023.
My bad, sir. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. So folks, go back a little bit, maybe 20 minutes ago. Everybody had their minutes, had a chance to review them. So we do have to approve them. So do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Second,
Seconded.
discussion? Any edits, any changes? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed? The ayes have it. Again, Mr. Solicitor, thank you so very much. All right, so our next regular meeting is at 6 p.m. virtually on February 27th, and that will give us some discussion about what our March meeting, where and what it may look like. Do we have anybody, Ms. Stephanie, for public speaking? Public comment?
No, the Ozarks say hello.
Please give them our best. Tell them to stay warm and safe.
I think they can hear us. They just can't.
Okay.
They don't have a microphone, I think.
Okay. Thanks, Ozarks. Stay warm out there. Any other?
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would just like to extend appreciation to our staff who have done a remarkable job under some trying circumstances over the last year or two. We do have, of course, Ms. Edwards has just joined and has come right in the door, just on it. And Demisha Carpenter, who came back after finishing her degree. Our shuffling of staff, where Sherry now is our outreach community liaison. Michelle Kirchner, sorry, Michelle, who has taken over the intake and has done a fabulous job with keeping her fingers on the pulse of where investigations are, where they're going, correcting courses when necessary. And of course, David, who has been very helpful and kind of agile when it comes to being creative in terms of getting information and being resourceful. Tiffany, who brings a particular expertise with her related to forensics investigations, that sort of thing. and her community sense, her sense, the heartbeat of the communities, and how to work with people, particularly victims or people who have suffered some kind of loss that may be haunting them. But the kinds of emotional issues that people deal with on a daily basis. We have just a tremendous core of staff, and Miss Hampton, who has just kept this train on the track. She's done a great job since she's been with us. How many years now? 5?
This is my 6th year.
6th year? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Beth, for those kind words to our team.
Absolutely.
And-
These are very good. Some of the best investigators I've seen. Excellent reporting.
But
To all of
they
you.
are not, they don't have the doors open for them. They have to be creative. They have to find workarounds. They have to be, they have to be sharp in terms of what it is, what their goal is, and where they're trying to get to. And they run into a lot of resistance from people who don't want to talk to anybody, But dealing with all of that, they have done a fabulous job. And Stephanie, you've done a great job. And I say this, I guess I ought to just acknowledge this too. I say that from having 25 years of experience of watching this place. And we have had the best teams of board members, of staff, of legal representation that we've gotten through a lot, and we're still standing. And it's only, I think, attributable to the quality and the character of everyone who has had a role in the Citizen Police Review Board since 1997. So kudos to all of us, and wishing us all the very best of all that's good for us in this new year.
And thank you for being at the helm and keeping the train going forward. And Steph, for keeping it on the track, and again, for all the work you folks do day in and day out. It is, you might not know it from us, but we greatly appreciate everything that you do. That being said,
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Anybody want to discuss why we should or not leave here? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? See you all in February.